because I've been having all sorts of trouble getting going on both formats. So if you're joining me and you can see me and hear me, let me know. Hey, I am showing up on Facebook as well. That is a great sign. So let me know how. Oh. Excellent. All right. People are here and everything. Okay. People on Facebook are happy. People on YouTube are happy. Excellent. Well, that was easy. Mostly painless. All right. So we're just early. Cool. How's everyone doing? Okay, so I have it pulled up on my phone on YouTube. I'm not on YouTube, but on Facebook, and I didn't know that it was doing closed captioning. Is everyone else seeing closed captioning on Facebook? Because that's great. That's super cool. I love that. No? Kristen doesn't have closed captioning. I wonder if it's a setting in your individual settings or if you have if it's part of new Facebook, I wonder. I don't know. But either way, it's there for me, so I hope it's like going to be a thing. And I'll try not to get distracted by the typos that closed captioning always has. Okay, it's 5:30. We are talking about planning and prioritizing your training. And typically, when I have talked about this in the past, and this kind of goes back, I think the first time I talked about this was at video is very pixelated. Anyone else? Let me know if it's, well, I'm not going to use the whiteboard if that helps. I'm just going to talk. So if the audio is good, then I will continue. So let me know if is the audio breaking up as well, Lizzie? All right. Okay, so historically, when I have talked about planning your training and kind of, I tend to go down a road that can feel a little bit overwhelming at first. Because I think we have to start at the top. We have to start at a big picture goal. Okay, excellent. If the audio is fine, it's a podcast. Turn the thing upside down and we'll be fine. But I do see that, because like I said, I have it on Facebook on my phone and it's blurry on the phone, but it looks great on YouTube, I think. So weird. My hair is a right mess. I trained dogs in the last little bit of daylight before coming up here. This post-training mess. All right, so we need to start with a big picture goal, because otherwise prioritizing doesn't work if there's not something we're waiting for. And the first time I was really asked to do this with Dr. Kat, and she wanted a 5-year plan. And that seemed ridiculous to me at the time. And that may seem even more ridiculous to you right now, given the state of the world and all of the unknowns. But hear me out. The 5-year plan gives you the ability to sort of take some control over what it is you hope to achieve. So the 5-year plan is not something that we can set in stone, obviously, because we need to be flexible enough, but it at least puts down to paper what you really want when it comes to dog sports. Even if it's not a huge competitive goal, even if it is, it doesn't matter what your goals are. They can be, something that is big to you might be small to someone else, and vice versa. So it doesn't matter what the big picture goal is, but I do like setting something down on paper and deciding, okay, this is what I want. This is what I want to accomplish for myself. I just answered that question for you. So do you do a 5-year plan for each dog or your achievements in general? I prefer the 5-year plan to be about me, because dog sports are about me. Competition is about me. So coming from a place of competitiveness, my 5-year plan is about what I want to accomplish, and I plug in the dog that is best suited for those accomplishments. And it could be that you have multiple dogs that plug into that. It could be that you have one that is more suited for this goal in this sport, and one is better suited for the goals in this sport, and so on and so on. The 5-year plan kind of gives you a way to go, okay, this is what my years look like. You know, before we had a pandemic, we could pretty much rely on certain events taking place at certain times. So you really, it's only a little bit weird now. So maybe a very flexible 5-year plan if you're just doing this for the first time today. But, you know, or even if it's a 2-year plan or a 1-year plan for now that you'll expand on when we know a little bit more about how things are going to go as we learn more and as facilities start to have more events, and how we figure out how to have big national events safely, things like that. So you can do less than 5 years right now, but I do it for me, my big picture. So I would also include like some professional goals, because my favorite like mental thing is every yes is a no. So if I say yes to this like big chunk of time traveling to all these competitions, I can't do all that and develop 7 new classes during that time, which is what I did during the pandemic when all of my competition goals changed. The professional goals just kind of, they swooped in and kind of saved my sanity. So the 5-year plan really helps, because you have a job, you have a life outside of agility, you have a life outside of dog sports, you have some obligations outside of training and competing with your dogs. Some of us have more than others, because some of you guys will have children or family members that you have to take care of, and all of that matters. Because I don't think it's fair to look back at your year and go, oh my gosh, I've accomplished nothing compared to that person over there. But that person over there has their own building, doesn't have any kids, they get to do dog sports all day long, and you have 3 kids, a job, and you get to do agility once a week, right? So the 5-year plan, I think, helps with some of that comparison and helps you lay out, okay, this is how much time I realistically have to put into these goals. Because I think probably the number one thing that goes wrong with getting goals is unrealistic expectations. So the 5-year plan gets you to lay out your actual life and fit things into it. So I account for everything: professional goals, competitive goals, events that I like attending professionally, events that I like attending as a competitor, other things. You know, I was supposed to go on like a real vacation in September. Didn't happen, but things like that. If you take time off from dog sports, it goes into your yearly plans, because then it's just done. You take time and you wind down. Okay. So 5-year plan. That, like I said, do it smaller if it just gives you all sorts of anxiety, especially right now when we don't know so much. Do 1 year. What do you want the next year to look like? Because some of us might not be trialing until things are a little bit more secure and solid. So do a year. Then once you have that, you're going to break those things down into actionable steps. So whatever your 5-year plan is with your big picture goal, what are the things that you have to do along the way to get to your big picture goal? And like I said, we kind of answer back to that question: is this about you or the dogs? I don't assign like outcome goals to specific dogs. I assign the actionable steps to specific dogs if I need to. There was a point in time where Smack and Shock just did everything on my little, it ends up looking like a board game, right? Like take 3 steps forward and you get that. Right? It's gonna be like a board game. So there was once a time where Smack and Shock were kind of moving along the board at the same pace, doing all the same things. And then Shock had puppies. So then Smack kind of kept going up the 5-year plan, and Shock kind of got held back. And then her noise sensitivity became a problem. So her board game changed, and Smack's getting older. And then Shrek got a piece on the game board, and he has moved wildly around the board. You know, he got sent to jail a few times. You're getting the analogy. I come up with some of these things. I've never used a game board analogy for this talk in my life, and now my brain is going wild with it. So let me know if I'm crazy. But your actionable steps might be events that you need to go to. Like if you are qualifying for a big event, then you're going to have to go to certain events to make that big event possible, things like that. Okay. I told you I start big and then we work down, and then I usually overwhelm people at this point. Excellent. I'm glad the analogy works, because it feels like a game board, because it's not linear. You don't just get to keep going forward all the time. Sometimes you have to go backwards a few steps. Sometimes you lose a turn. Sometimes you get sent to jail. You do not get to collect $200, that sort of thing. My 5-year plan game board in my head is a combination of Candyland and Monopoly, obviously, because I can, like, it goes like this, but I also like the go directly to jail, do not collect $200. So that's what my game board looks like. You can tell me what your game board looks like. I think that's going to go into the mindset class, is when we're making our big picture goals, instead of a calendar, instead of a timeline, we're going to make a game board. That sounds way more fun. Okay, so then we're going to start breaking that down. So you have your goal, get Dog and I on the same game. Exactly. Please, like some Shrek is off playing like Snakes and Ladders, and I'm over here playing Candyland and Monopoly. So yeah, that happens too. I bet I had just a Monopoly board, very linear, and then Shrek came in and dumped a Candyland board on top of my Monopoly board, and that's what happened. Trouble with Connect 4 in life. That's excellent. See, I think I think this is gonna, I'm gonna have to write that down. I have to remember to update the mindset class, because I'm going wild with that. Okay. So now you have like these major, you know, like on game boards where it's like a major thing, like woohoo, you did it, you get this much money or this many points, blah, 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 blah. Those are like your big ticket items. They take more, they're big stepping stones. They're kind of, they're more immediate goals, but all of those more immediate goals are going to add up to your big picture goal eventually. But then all of those big ticket items have to also be broken down, right? And that's when we get really picky. So all those little tiny blocks on the game board that don't feel like in the moment, they don't really give you anything. They just are moving you forward towards the big ticket item. And I think that's kind of our day-to-day training. And I think that's what we're talking about here tonight. But I don't think we know what those little blocks are until we've designed the game board. Okay? Let me know if you're still with me or if I've lost the plot completely because of my wild analogy. All right. Excellent. So now let's talk about those little squares that maybe don't mean that much in the moment, but you need them if you want to reach those goals. There's just the tiniest bit of delay with Facebook, and I'm catching on to it now. Okay. I like to each month, so this is great. This is the beginning of a new month. I like to write out some, bit. And did you come in and did you just get in, or have you been listening from the beginning? You might have to go catch the very beginning of the recording, but we're getting to the meat of it now. I like to write out at the beginning of the month kind of some, not in any real detail, just some things, 3 or 4 things that I want to put some effort into that month. 3 or 4 things. The younger the dog is, the more things are on my list. That's just because that's how I train. I do like little tiny pieces. And I might only visit one tiny piece once in that month. So the younger they are, the more items are on their list. But in general, it kind of mashes into 3 or 4 things. So for instance, Shrek, I'm working on his like team 2 skills. So on November, team 2 is one of his goals. Some ring prep is one of his goals. And then so that I can do some virtual trialing maybe at the end of November. Yeah. End of November before the big, end of November. And then some anti-hunting protocols, some stuff that I've been working on with him. So those are kind of his big ticket items for the month. Okay, those are the things that I want to work on. And then each week, I'm going to create myself a little bit of a task list. Okay. And the task list I do at the beginning of the week. So I'll do it on like Sunday. And I just write down the training sessions that I'm going to do. And it's just a list. They all fit within those 3 or 4 bigger ticket items for the month. And I don't go into a ton of detail. I just have a little bit of a checklist. So like the major things with team 2 is his pivoting, his fronts, and his finishes. Those are like, I have to do those. And I have to write down to do them or I won't do them. So I want to do those things probably a couple times, those 3 things at least twice this week. And for ring prep, I'll get more detail for this week about I want to do end of run routines at the agility field. So that's like a major thing for him. And because I don't do only ring prep, he'll also train like whatever I need to film. I have like a different goal list for what I need for my online classes. So I'll pick 1 or 2 things from that list that I need him to do that he will train. So not necessarily things that he needs to do, but it's something I need to do so that I have it on film. And then whatever I need to do that week for working on the hunting. Okay, so I just make a checklist for the week. And I make a checklist versus saying on Monday, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And Tuesday, I'm going to do this, this, and this. I avoid that because it takes the pressure off. So just have a little checklist. And I do use the whiteboard for these checklists because they're easy to erase. I can change the checklist. If I had problems with something and I need to change what I'm training for the rest of the week, then I can change the whiteboard. It's way easier. So downstairs where I usually train my team skills, I have a whiteboard that I'll just list the team things that I'm going to do that week so that when I walk by, I can see, oh, I haven't done any fronts and it's Friday. Better do that the next time I train. Okay. But the priorities come down to what those big ticket items on the game board were on your big picture goal. Okay. And then I have some monthly goals and then weekly checklist. Sound okay? Sounds doable? And then I wait because there's that little delay on Facebook. I get a like. Excellent. Sounds overwhelming. Okay. Which part? Because I get this a lot. And so I believe you that it's overwhelming. And it was overwhelming for me at first as well. But it's just something that is not, it's just a part of the day. The checklist idea works really well because then it's okay if you don't get it done that week, you can just roll it over to the next week. Yeah, exactly what Bree said. if it's not done, it just gets carried over the next week because it supports the monthly goal. Your weekly checklists are all about those monthly goals. So if you don't get to something that week, you just can roll it over and it works really well. How do you balance multiple dogs? The thought of doing this for 6 dogs seems eek. Yeah. So, yeah, the more dogs you have and the more sports you're wanting to do, the more you're going to have to really think about that game board because you've got way more routes and paths that your game board needs to take. So I can't really speak. So I've never had more than 2 dogs kind of competing at the highest level at the same time. So it's kind of like what I said in the very beginning is that at one point, Smack and Shock were kind of on the same path. And then at one point, they split off for a little while and then got added to the board. So obviously, I like staggering and not having a ton of dogs of the same age needing all the same things because I think that's more overwhelming. But more dogs means commitment to training, which means if you're saying yes to training and competing with more dogs, what are you saying no to? I mean, that's the answer. Process and knowing what I want in 5 years. Okay, so Kirsty, think even bigger than that. What do you want to accomplish in your sport when you're done with the sport? When you've hung up your hat and you said, okay, no more agility, what do you want to have accomplished? Go even bigger. And then think, okay, what am I aiming? What are some steps to get to that? And what can I do in the next 5 years to get to that? And it's allowed to change. My game board, my 5-year plan has changed so many times. I don't think I've ever actually finished the game board exactly how I planned it, but that's okay. That's where the game of life comes in, right? It's okay to change, but there's no way to prioritize things if we don't know what we're aiming for. Talk about how you go from big picture 5-year goals to priority items. Do you make a big giant list of the first goal? When do you update that? So I didn't really dive deep into it, but how I would do it is, I don't know why I always choose AKC Nationals, but let's talk about AKC Nationals. You need to attend AKC Nationals a certain amount of cues. So that means I need to pick out the events that I want to go to where I'm going to collect those cues. And then from there, I have certain skills that I need to earn those cues. And those skills, those boring boxes, are your typical training sessions. And I mean, I could talk for probably 3 hours on the 5-year plan alone. So perhaps this conversation continues over the month of November. Is it easier to start with goal setting for one dog and add in multiples, or easy to start with one thing per dog? So think about it more from your perspective. So what is it that you want to accomplish in agility? What is it? And if you're doing multiple sorts, what is it that you want to accomplish in obedience? What is it that you want to accomplish in dock diving? And then put the dogs on the board that fit those things. And maybe it's a little bit of different how I think about it, because I don't think in terms of titles necessarily, because then I would say I want Shrek to have this title this year. So that's, I don't think down that path. I think about what I want from the sport. So if I want a specific title, I say, I want this title. Let's say a mock in agility. I want a mock. I want it. I don't put it on a dog. So if I want a mock next year, I have 3 dogs in this house that I could technically put on that path. So then I would put them on that path and do whatever I needed to get myself to the mock. Does that help? But I don't say Smack's getting a mock this year. I have put goals on a whiteboard, but I have not been able to keep it up for more than a couple of weeks. Okay, so habits do take a little bit longer than that to form, because especially when we've been doing it a different way for longer than 2 weeks. I think 3 weeks is the sweet spot. So when you're trying to form a new habit, you want to do just the tiniest bit, just the smallest piece of that habit. So for instance, when I'm trying to convince students to record keep, the first step, can you for 1 week after you train, write down the very last thing that you did? Because then you get in the habit of taking some notes. Not any details, just for 1 week, write down the last thing that you did, so that when you go to train that skill again, you can read the last thing you did and you can pick up there. And then I tell them, okay, for once that's easy, once you're like finishing the training session and you're already in the notebook, right? You don't even have to think about it. Writing things down after a training session is easy. Week 2 is, I think, filming it. You don't even have to watch it. Just film it and write down the last thing that you did. Just turn the camera on. You don't have to watch any of it. Turn the camera on when you're there and see what happens. And when you're doing that, that's easy. So now you're getting in the habit of turning the camera on and writing down the last thing that you did. Then the 3rd week, you add a little bit more to that. So taking down 1 note about what you really liked about that session or what you want to do next time. So just like 1 note. So you have to, when you're building these habits, you have to start small. So I think that's another reason why this doesn't tend to last, is we try to take on the whole thing at once. And we know better as dog trainers than to try and put the whole behavior together in 1 day or 1 session. So split it apart and do just 1 thing, 1 teeny tiny thing for a week. And when that's feeling easy, now do 2 tiny things for a week, and then 3, and then 4. And then it becomes easy to just write everything down and analyze everything to death and have a game board in your head. Okay. Excellent, Kirsty. Goal setting got way easier when I stopped putting it on the dogs. Competitive goals are about me. They're my goals. I have multiple dogs. Let's see which one gets me there. And then also, it relieves the pressure if the dogs you currently have don't get you there. And that, huge for me. It was so huge. As soon as I took the pressure off the specific dog, I got it done with that dog. And it was like magic. So goals, competitive goals, are about you. Dog doesn't care. Dog doesn't know. So I think it helps. Okay. So monthly goals, weekly checklists. Weekly checklists can roll over to the next week. So if, life happens and you don't get it done, it's fine, because everything is building on each other. Everything is building on each other. Okay. And that, I think, let's talk a little bit more about what that 5-year plan really does as well. Because the monthly goals, you can, when you're making your monthly goals, kind of about how much time you're going to have to be able to commit that month. So if you've got a busy month of traveling or working really on some big project, or how much time you're going to have on a monthly basis. So if it's a really busy month, don't crowd your list with goals that you can't meet that month. Focus on one thing that you're going to train that month. Also, on a month-to-month basis, we have a better idea of how much money we can put into our training. Can you afford that class that you need for this specific goal? Things like that. And of course, other resources, right? Do you have access to the equipment? It's now winter. If you work all day and you come home and it's dark, you have less time, right? Because now you can only train outside on the weekends. So, those monthly goals, you have to take into account your time, your money, and your other resources. And things like that. Okay. So, I think, Melissa, this is normal that we tend to put the goal on the dog, but that's not, it's not up to the dog to reach the goal. So that doesn't make it. And I was the same. I would say this dog is going to do this thing this year. And that's my goal for this dog. And that was normal. That's what we do. We want this title with this dog. We want to attend this event with this dog. But for some reason now, when I look at it this way, that competition isn't for the dog. Titles aren't for the dog doesn't gain anything for it. As soon as I took that away, everything got easier. Everything. Okay. So now we're in the week. All right. What I kind of do throughout the week is I will take quick notes after each training session. They're pretty sloppy. It's usually notable items that, hey, the old Sheltie she's pretty sure that is dinner time. She's wrong. I just don't want her barking a whole lot. She gets upset, but she can't hear me either. Come here, sweetie. You're okay. Okay. So quick notes after the training session, just anything that stuck out to you, maybe something you have a question about, and just quickly what you'll do next time. It's just things that I'm afraid I won't remember if I don't write them down. That's kind of what gets done really quickly. And I usually do that immediately after the session because I don't want to forget. And I will forget. And you will too. And it's fine. So just get in the habit of just jotting down something really quick after the training session. And I typically video all my training. So that's very helpful because then if I do forget something or I perceived it differently, so I wrote something down and I put a question mark by it, I can then review the video and answer my own question. Okay. But if I don't have the video, that stays a question mark. And I have to kind of dig into that question either at the next time I'm training that specific thing, or maybe it comes up again in a different skill. Okay. I tend to really sit down and review all the videos. And if I'm going to use them for anything, edit, or, if I'm going to upload them, things like that, that's kind of different because I edit things for using online. But just from analyzing my own training perspective, I kind of do that about once a week. When I'm going to make my next week's plans, because then I can look at that checklist and go, okay, I did this plus some because that went great. So I can actually jump ahead, or I don't even have to do this next week. Or I can say, well, this did not go the way it was hoping to go. So I need to reorganize my thoughts and break that down more. Right. So I do that about once a week. I kind of look at my noteworthy things, those little details that I wrote down. I'll review the video if I need to, decide what to do with that video, delete it, scrap it, write it down. I also then, when I'm reviewing it, I will keep myself a note in my work checklist of, I have this video. So when I go to put it into like a lecture or something, I can find it. So I try to double dip on that weekly video review, so that it helps me when I'm working. And then staying on track, okay, because this is the biggie. I think when we have so many things to train, how do you stay on track? And I think we need to try very hard to stick to that checklist. And then we also sometimes need to get creative in how can we make our weekly group class that we go to. If you go to a weekly group class, how can you make that group class fit into your checklist? Because you're putting time and money and resources into that group class. But if the group class isn't working on the things that are on your checklist, it can feel like it's more of a time waster than usefulness, right? And I know that that this was hard teaching group classes, because I would know that students working on this in particular, but then they come to class and that's not what I have set up for the day, right? And your group class can't accommodate the one, it has to accommodate the group of students that the instructor is teaching. So can you fit that? You're going to a group class, something like that. How does that fit in your monthly goal and your weekly checklist? And can use it to be used as a priority? For example, if Shrek was going to a group class right now, I would probably use that class as his ring impressions. And so I would go in, I would talk to the instructor and say, I really want to work on, I will use my time to work on your sequence, but I would like to set it up so that I can practice his exit routine. And if the instructor's cool with that, great. We go. And if the instructor's not cool with that, I would personally consider, taking the month off from the group class, because I'm so glued to my priority list. Like, I live and die by my task list every day. So I have a hard time putting time, money, energy into something that doesn't support that checklist. But I think most of the time we can make that group class work within the checklist most of the time. What do you guys think? I think I was a flexible in-person instructor. When someone came to me and said, I really want to do this, I think I was flexible. Like, I'm saying these things, and I'm like, was I that instructor? Was I accommodating when students had a checklist? Okay. So now we've sort of talked about multiple dogs, multiple sports, and spending that time. Whew, okay, Lizzie, good. Lizzie thinks I was pretty flexible. I mean, sometimes I just really wanted to run my class that I planned, but I try to like meet the students with what they need. And sometimes they brought with them, this is what I need, but I always tell my students to work on what they need. That's what class is for. And so, Sandy, this is a good point. They may not know what they need. If they haven't been doing this, if they've not been kind of tracking their progress or thinking about what goals. And I think this is real because students do rely heavily on the instructor making the training plans. But that also can be problematic if the training plans are not necessarily what that student needs. Like, it's so hard to accommodate in a group class for everything. But sometimes the students don't know what they need if they've not tackled some real goal setting and creating their game board. Okay, Nancy has had great experiences with group class instructors supporting by their training, and I think is really important. And it's just a communication piece. Hey, I've been working on this. Do you mind if blah, blah, blah? So yeah, make the group classes work for you as best you can. Multiple dogs, multiple sports. Yeah, you'll blow their mind, Sandy, when they like it's. I think it makes everything more clear when it's kind of written out. So it's a good point, Abby. Presumably the instructor knows more than you, so you trust that their emphasis is useful to long-term goals. Yeah, I'm not going to completely disagree. I am going to say that my goals for my students might be different than my students' goals for themselves. So sometimes there is a mismatch there. And so I think there, overall, the more transparency there is between what that class is about and the expectations of the class and the students' expectations of the class and the instructor's expectations of the class, the more communication there is, the better off you're going to be. But I have seen those things happen. I've been on the instructor side of that, going, okay, this is the path that I see you down, and this is where I think you should be headed. And the student's like, I don't want anything to do with that. I want to be on this path doing this thing, earning these things. And I'm like, oh, well, then maybe we should put you in this class, right? So sometimes that happens. Okay. I'm going to run back through the list really quick, and you guys are going to pop your questions into the comments, and we'll wrap this up. This baby puppy has slept through this. He's a good sleeper. I can just hear his little snoring. So big picture goal. What do you hope to achieve in your sport or sports of choice in your time competing? When you are done with that sport, you're retired and you're sitting and looking off into the sunset, what do you hope to have accomplished? Big picture. Okay. And then just make a 5-year plan for that, kind of moving towards that goal. If you know that goal is going to take you more than 5 years, it's fine. Cap it at 5 years for now. If you want to go and make a giant 20-year plan, you go for it. I'm not going to stop you. I've had those moments where I go, and then this year I'm going to do this, and then that, and then 5 years from that. Like, I've done it, but it doesn't hold any weight because I can't keep to a 5-year plan, much less a 20-year plan. Yeah, it's changeable. Actionable steps. So those big ticket items that should advance you towards that big picture goal year after year after year. And then those small bricks that don't really mean anything as part of the game, but you're going forward, you're not going backwards. But it's okay to go backwards because those were also connected skills. Right? Everyone's afraid of going back to foundations, but they're my favorite skills to teach is the boring stuff, the foundation skills. Okay, so it's okay to go backwards and revisit some skills that you've already done because everything builds on each other and everything is connected. And if you're working on things that don't fit into that game board, it's probably not a very high priority. Okay? Write down some monthly goals. Your monthly goals are, you can really take into account your time, your money, your other resources like access to equipment, access to the class, time at home, time away, things like that. So you can adjust your monthly goal list based on what you're likely able to take on. And then each week you can have a checklist that rolls over. It's a checklist, not a daily you must do taskmaster list. It rolls over, especially during a pandemic when days of the week don't matter. Just rolls over. Okay. Try to take some quick notes after each session. Just anything noteworthy that stood out to you and what you want to do next time so that you can just quickly glance at it before you do a similar training session, before you train that skill again. You just quickly go, oh, okay, yep, I remember, and you go on. Okay. Staying on track, use a whiteboard if that works for you. Use a notebook if that works for you. The whiteboard I like having because I'll walk by it often and go, oh, I haven't done so-and-so this week. I'm going to make sure I do that. I'll do that tonight after they eat dinner, blah, blah. So the whiteboard is a really big visual clue. Or if you have, like I have a daily planner as well, or weekly planner as well. So I can look at it and go, oh, I have a chunk of time this day. Why don't I plan to go to the agility field? And I can pop off like a bunch of things that I need to train because I have so many dogs. So if I have a chunk of time, I can put in that time and train multiple things with multiple dogs. Multiple dogs, multiple sports. Every yes is a no. So if you're saying yes to training a bunch of dogs, what are you saying no to? If you're saying yes to training in a bunch of sports, what are you saying no to? If you're saying yes to traveling to X event, what are you saying no to? Things like that. Because I am a recovered yes person, because I used to say yes to everything. And when I learned how to say no, my life got a lot easier. Any questions? Excellent. You are very welcome, Abby. Okay. Good, Lynn. I'm glad it was helpful to you. It's impossible to do it all, right? And I think I said this. Someone asked a question about human FOMO, fear of missing out. And my answer is using every yes as a no. It helps with the human FOMO, because I tend to have some FOMO when there's this big event that I'm not at, and I really want to be there, and I really want to be running those courses. And then I go, you said no to that event because you got to say yes to this, or you said yes to this, so you couldn't say. So it helps me to know that I got to choose that. I had control over it, because I can say no to these things to be able to say yes to these other things. Thank you, Helen. Another whiteboard. Everyone needs another whiteboard. No questions tonight, but vote for a follow-up chat on this in the next month, because I'm sure questions will come up. Absolutely. I can write that down. Let's talk about how you're getting on. And also, if questions come up, post them in the group. We can talk about it just via text and things like that. And I definitely think, since I talked about Torch's like monthly goals last week, I'm sure I'll do like a once a month thing about Torch and how he's coming along, so we can definitely talk about this on a regular basis. Time and mental space are resources I forget about. Those are great ones, Nancy, because there are just not enough hours in the day, especially since they just took one away from us. And mental space, especially right now, like, give yourself a break. Like, mental energy right now is a limited resource, and it is a hot commodity. We need it. And so if you're looking at, so that's real. So go ahead and take like one thing off your goals list that you would normally do in normal times. You would have, oh, I could get all this done. But mental space, you need the mental space for it. So if you're feeling drained, take one of those things off your goal list and move it over. Move it over to the next month. All right. Thank you guys for joining me this evening. I hope you guys all have a fantastic week.